When you think of an ideal novel, what do you think of? A clear, easy-to-follow story? Maybe even the classic hero's tale? What about a dashing, beautiful protagonist? Well, buckle up, because this is not that kind of story. Hello, my name is Ethan Hahn, and today I'm going to be taking you through my most recent read, A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. Before we get started, I want to highlight a list of items I want to cover today. We'll be discussing a bit of Toole himself, a brief overview of the story, some themes, and a literary criticism that I read. Without further ado, let's begin. The Toole of the Trade. John Kennedy Toole was born in New Orleans in 1937 to Thelma Toole, his mother. She'll become very important later on in the story. He excelled as a student, receiving a bachelor's degree at Tulane University and a master's in English from Columbia University. During his pursuit of his PhD, he was drafted into the United States Army. While stationed in Puerto Rico, he spent his time teaching English, his field of mastery. Once he returned to Louisiana 2 years later, he taught at Dominican College for a time, whilst also working on a novel. That novel, A Confederacy of Dunces, would be rejected by publisher after publisher. Frustrated at his failure to interest a publisher in his novel, Toole tragically committed suicide in 1969 at just 39 years old. His mother would find his completed manuscript and eventually approached Walker Percy, where she insisted that he read her late son's great novel. Percy reluctantly agreed, though he found himself more and more invested in Toole's masterpiece, pleasantly surprised at the quality and humor the book presented. The book will be published in 1980, 11 years after the death of its mastermind author. Indeed, it is tragic that Toole did not live to see his book win the Pulitzer Prize just a year after its publication. But we cannot let this loss drive us away from this great American novel, a novel that makes its readers gape, grin, laugh out loud, shake their heads in wonderment. A Summary of Dunces. This book is quite an interesting one, containing several different themes to follow, a plot to arouse the mind, a cast of classic, stereotypical characters, and one very complex protagonist. We follow Ignatius J. Riley, an arrogant, judgmental, socially awkward, gastronomically challenged, and obese 30-year-old man. I think, personally, this cover does a really good job of describing those characteristics, especially you can tell with this button, which is crying on for its life trying to stay on, that he's pretty obese. You can see his classic, I believe that's a hunter's cap with its flaps, very large flaps visibly down, and there's that plaid shirt, button shirt, yeah. An eccentric man, Ignatius holds himself to beliefs that society would have considered to be unnatural or strange, leaving him profoundly out of step with the world around him. Despite what his traits present, Ignatius is quite an educated fellow, holding knowledge of medieval philosophy and having quite the knack for supporting social equality. It is with this education that Ignatius sees himself as this superior man, which is humorously contrasted by his appearance and his mannerisms, especially his farting. Our story finds its beginnings when Ignatius's mother crashes their car, resulting in a $1,000 fine that his mother forces Ignatius to pay off. From here, he sets off on this journey between jobs, from the Levi's pants factory to the vendor of a hot dog stand. There is something funny that I would actually like to mention here. At his filing job at the pants factory, when you're at the filing job, your job is to put stuff in files and organize stuff, right? What he does instead is he just takes all of the files and he just throws them in the trash. These are important documents, mind you. He just throws them into the trash. But then what gets me, what I find a little humorous, is that the boss, like the one who's supervising him, sees that all the filing cabinets are closed and are clean, and then he just assumes that the job is done, so he doesn't even question it. And I don't know why, I found that part quite humorous in this story. Now, skipping towards the end of the story, we see behind Ignatius a trail of chaos and havoc, fueled by his refusal to conform and his general big-headedness. Not literally, but could be literally. I'm talking figuratively, like his arrogance. He spirals deeper into absurd misadventures and seems headed for disaster. It is because of this spiraling that his mother calls for Ignatius to be institutionalized in a mental facility, which alarms him. As he scrambles without knowing what to do, he is saved by Myrna Minkoff. I never really learned how to pronounce the name. Myrna Minkoff, a girl somehow obsessed with Ignatius. This guy, you can do better than that. The last part of the book shows Ignatius hastily packing his stuff, ready to leave behind the life of responsibility into which he was thrust by his mother. This ending, at least to me, is strange. Firstly, we are baited into believing that Ignatius would have had his actions catch up to him, but instead we are greeted with him running off, gallivanting away from the chaos he created. It is in this sense that I believe that this ending mocks the typical happy ending, as despite the second chance he is given, it does not appear that Ignatius has changed at all. He's the same judgmental, flatulent man we met causing a scene at D.H. Holmes' department store. Ignatius, all at once you're your old, horrible self. All at once, I'm thinking I'm making a very big mistake. Themes from the classroom. There was one theme that I want to touch on relating to what I've learned during my English class this year. Counterculture, or perhaps the complete opposite. Taking from Apebush, counterculture is a culture in which people embrace non-conformity, going against traditional societal norms to express themselves, which is similar to the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, where the African American community who had moved up north were beginning to express themselves through forms of art, culture, jazz especially, and poetry, writing, just all around stuff that typically they were not able to. Now, I believe Ignatius falls into this sort of category of counterculture. However, instead of being a resistor of conservatism, which is typically associated, for example, through the teens, through the grunge movement, I'm sure you know what grunge is, he is actually, I consider him a resistor of change. Ignatius holds to him dear an older, and more importantly, different style of philosophy than what American society believed in at the time. Employers sense in me a denial of their values. They fear me. I suspect that they can see that I'm forced to function in a century which I loathe. Ignatius insists on his views as superior, which is given some merit by his uber-educated mind, ironically contrasted by his unpopular views of what is proper and decent, along with his gluttonous appearance. Ignatius's resistance to a developing America represents a symbol of resistance to change in a rapidly modernizing world. Criticize the criticism. For my literary criticism, I read through Elizabeth S. Bell's The Clash of Worldviews in John Kennedy Toole's A Confederacy of Dunces. I took away two main points from this write-up, which I will discuss now. First off, one of her points is that the book serves as an allegory where people prefer their illusions rather than harsh reality. Bell writes, "This final irony, with its cosmic dark laughter, provides the novel's framing allegory, the modern-day allegory of Toole's vision. In the modern age, we accept with gratitude our illusions, for they are preferable to the alternatives." Based on my reading, I have to disagree with this aspect of her paper. Yes, Ignatius does disdain the world around him, and he does place himself on a pedestal and believes that his view is correct. But I don't think that directly means that he suppresses the society around him and ignores it completely. Rather, I believe that due to his different nature, he does not quite understand the world around him, and that is the illusion that Bell refers to. Secondly, Bell makes connections between Ignatius's and Toole's life, stressing the tragic characteristics both hold. For one, she writes about the isolation and disconnection both feel, with Toole writing, "I mingle with my peers or no one, and since I have no peers, I mingle with no one," and Bell writing that Toole saw himself as inevitably one of the dunces doomed to the deceptions and vagaries of a hostile world. She also highlights the alienation they both feel through Ignatius's higher intellect and Toole's inability to find a willing publisher of his book. I have to say that, with the evidence presented and with her arguments, I agree with this part of her criticism. Closing remarks and recommendations. Everywhere I look, I see people commenting on the deeper genius meanings of this novel, and I especially read about the artful comedy this novel supposedly is. In my academic reading of this book, I must have missed many of those elements. While I can recognize that this book invoked in me some deep conversations about the way I saw the world and how others saw me in my own personal views, I cannot in good faith provide any form of recommendation for this book, simply because I don't think I enjoyed it to its fullest extent. From my pondering, a question formed, and I'd like to ask you that question. All of the books we've read this year, from Huckleberry Finn to A Raisin in the Sun, do you think you've truly enjoyed these stories? Do you think that maybe, perchance, that you've been blocked from truly enjoying it because we've had to read it for academic purposes? Is there any itch in the back of your mind where you'd like to delve back into these timeless classics? This brings up my point. Perhaps the truest measure of a story's worth is not whether we enjoyed every page or if we can write a meaningful analysis of its themes, but whether if it leaves us wondering, questioning, and yearning to return, not just to the book, but to the thoughts it stirred within us. Thanks so much for watching my my review slash analysis of A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. I know I just said that I can't really recommend this in my last paragraph, but I do think that this is a book worth reading. There are definitely some parts where it will make you laugh, like I did in my when I was talking about his jobs. And there's definitely some parts that maybe you might feel uncomfortable, but definitely I think this is a timeless classic, and it might even apply to modern day if you look for the right themes. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay cool.